The next day, June 7th, brought more of the same. The beachhead expanded. More troops landed. More supplies came ashore. The Allies pushed inland, taking villages, securing crossroads, establishing defensive positions, and Hitler continued to hold back the panzers. It wasn't until June 8th, 2 full days after the invasion, that he finally authorized the movement of some reserve units toward Normandy. Not because he'd changed his mind about Calais. He still believed the real invasion was coming there. But the situation in Normandy had deteriorated enough that he couldn't ignore it entirely. He released some units, but not all. He kept substantial forces near Calais, waiting for the invasion that would never come. By then, it was too late. The Allies had established air superiority so complete that German units moving in daylight were slaughtered from the air. The panzers that finally did move toward Normandy took days to get there, traveling only at night, hiding during the day, losing vehicles and men to Allied fighter bombers. When they finally reached the front, they arrived piecemeal, in small groups, too weak to launch the kind of massive counterattack that might have driven the Allies back into the sea. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who commanded Army Group B in northern France, had been away from his headquarters on June 6th. He'd been in Germany, visiting his wife for her birthday, convinced that the weather was too poor for an invasion. When he got the news, he'd raced back to France, driving through the night. He arrived on June 7th to find the situation already critical. Rommel had spent months preparing for this invasion. He'd placed obstacles on the beaches, mined the approaches, positioned his forces to respond quickly. But his plans had all assumed that when the invasion came, he'd be allowed to use the panzer reserves immediately to hit the Allies while they were still vulnerable on the beaches. Hitler's decision to hold back those reserves destroyed Rommel's entire defensive strategy. On June 9th, Rommel sent a message to Hitler's headquarters. The tone was carefully respectful, but the content was blunt. The situation in Normandy was deteriorating. The Allies were consolidating their position. Without massive reinforcements, without the full commitment of the panzer reserves, the beachhead couldn't be eliminated. Every day that passed made the Allied position stronger. Hitler's response came back the same day. Hold what you have. Contain the enemy. The reserves will be committed when the situation clarifies. Rommel read the message twice. Then he turned to his chief of staff. He still thinks Calais is coming. He's going to wait until it's impossible to stop them. He was right. Hitler's conviction that Normandy was a feint lasted for weeks. Even as the Allies poured more divisions into France, even as they broke out of the beachhead and began pushing toward Paris, Hitler kept substantial forces near Calais, waiting for an invasion that existed only in his mind. The Allied deception operation, Operation Fortitude, which had created a phantom army group in southeastern England supposedly preparing to invade Calais, was so successful that Hitler believed in it long after reality should have shattered the illusion. If we can't maneuver, if we can't fall back to better positions, they'll destroy us piece by piece. The Führer had taken his sleeping medication the night before. He never woke before 10, often not until 11. Anyone who disturbed him faced an explosion of rage that could end careers, or worse. 36 hours after hitting Omaha Beach, exhausted and still shaking from the landing, they were about to meet their allies face to face. "Hold fire," Morrison called softly. "They're ours." "Well, theirs. You know what I mean." The British patrol moved closer. Morrison stood, raised his hand. The lead British soldier, a lieutenant by his insignia, stopped, studied Morrison's group, then walked forward with his rifle slung. He was young, maybe 23, with a thin mustache and an expression of careful neutrality. 29th Infantry?" the British officer asked. His accent made the words sound clipped, formal. "That's right," Morrison said. "You're from Gold Beach." 50th Division. "We're meant to link up with your chaps around Port-en-Bessin." He glanced at the smoke rising from the direction of Omaha. "Rough go yesterday?" Morrison thought of the beach, the bodies in the surf. The 6 hours of hell before they'd finally gotten off the sand. "Yeah," he said. "Rough." The British lieutenant nodded once, as if Morrison had confirmed something he already knew. "Right then. We're pushing toward Bayous. Your command know we're in the area." "They do now," Morrison said. The lieutenant smiled slightly. Not quite friendly, not quite distant. "Good show. Carry on." He turned to his men, said something Morrison couldn't hear, and the patrol moved past, heading west. Morrison watched them go. His corporal, Eddie Hayes from Brooklyn, came up beside him. "That's it. That's the British." "What were you expecting?" "I don't know. More British, I guess. They look just like us." "Different helmets," Morrison said. "Different uniforms. Did you see their rifles?" "Lee Enfields," Hayes said. "My dad carried one in the last war. Said they're good guns. Just slow. Bolt action." Morrison nodded. The British were moving through the hedgerows with careful precision, each man covering the next, their spacing perfect. Professional. Controlled. "They look like they know what they're doing." "So do we," Hayes said, but there was a question in his voice. Morrison didn't answer. He was thinking about Omaha Beach, about the chaos and terror and desperate scrambling. These British troops moved like they were on parade, even here, even now. It was different. He couldn't say if it was better or worse, just different. By mid-morning, Morrison's platoon had moved 2 miles inland and encountered British forces 3 more times. Each encounter followed a similar pattern: careful identification, brief exchange, continuation. The British were polite, efficient, and utterly unruffled by the war happening around them. It was starting to unnerve the Americans. Private First Class Tommy Chen, a radio man from San Francisco, put it into words during a break in a farmyard. "They're too calm," he said, watching a British squad brew tea, in the ruins of a barn while German artillery rumbled in the distance. "Don't they know we're in a war?" The British had set up a small stove, produced tea from somewhere, and were passing around metal cups while their sergeant studied a map. One of them was smoking a pipe. A pipe. Morrison had seen men smoke cigarettes under fire, sure, but a pipe suggested leisure time, contemplation, a Sunday afternoon. "Maybe that's just how they are," Morrison said. "It's weird," Chen insisted. "We're all jumping at every sound, and they're having a tea party." A British soldier, a corporal, stocky and middle-aged, overheard and walked over, cup in hand. "Fancy a brew?" he asked, offering the tea to Chen. Chen took it, sniffed it suspiciously. "Is this really tea?" "Course it's tea. What else would it be?" "I don't know. Medicine? Fuel?" The British corporal laughed, a short bark of amusement. "You Yanks and your coffee. Can't function without it, can you? We're the same with tea. Keeps you steady." He tapped his temple. "Settles the nerves." Chen sipped the tea, made a face. "It's hot. That's rather the point." Morrison accepted a cup when it was offered. The tea was strong, bitter, nothing like the sweet iced tea his mother made back in Virginia. But it was hot, and the British corporal was right. There was something steadying about it, about the ritual of stopping, brewing, drinking, continuing. The British had been at war for 5 years now. Maybe this was how you survived that long. You made tea, you kept routines, you stayed human.